Morning.
Oh, well, hello.
Hello. Here we are. Caught us out by surprise. Nice to see you. I'm Angie.
And I'm Richard.
And here we are on the first Sunday in December. Which is exciting.
Yes.
And
Christmas is soon.
Christmas is soon. So we are here at Holy Baptist. Welcome if you're joining us live. Lovely to see you. Or if you're joining us on Catch Up or the podcast. We're so cool having a podcast.
Yeah.
Actually, everyone's got a podcast these days, haven't they?
I don't understand that. What is a podcast?
It's like a television program on the radio.
Oh, okay.
So it's like a radio program.
Just audio?
It's just audio. But you can listen to it anytime you want. But lots of them are people like this just chatting about things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I quite like
Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah.
But there's always lots of children's ones, always lots. And intellectual ones where you can learn stuff. I don't know. Anyway, good morning. We're doing the podcast wherever you are. We are at Holy Baptist, and today we are starting a new series.
Oh, what's that?
It is called Down to Earth. So it's a Christmas series, Down to Earth. So I guess it is about Jesus at Christmas came down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also about Jesus was a fairly down to earth sort of guy.
Was he?
Well,
he was quite. Did lots of miracles and things, didn't he?
He did do miracles, but he was with people. He was with people, wasn't he? He wasn't sort of with the Pharisees and the priests and the royalty. He was,
I see.
He was sort of with the commoners. With the commoners, yeah. Like
okay, yeah.
So
down to earth, yeah.
So we'll see, and it sounds like quite a good series. I'm quite looking forward to it. Just to mention here, we're also doing a Bible reading scheme. So along with the sermon series is a Bible reading scheme plan for Advent. And so you can just Google it. So if you just Google Down to Earth Reading Plan, it'll take you to the LICC, London Institute of Contemporary Christianity website, and you can sign up there. Or if you've got the Bible app, if you go into there and type in LICC, you'll find the Down to Earth plan. Then you get a reminder every day, and we can all read it together throughout this period. So that's good. Anyway, shall we watch a video that explains what this series is all about? Let's do that.
Do it.
Yes.
Join us this Christmas as we reflect on our down-to-earth Saviour, the Jesus who stepped into the mess and detail of life on earth and calls us to do the same. The great thing about this series is accompanying it is a daily Bible readings. You can find it on our Christmas part of our webpage, also in yours, and it got emailed out this week as well. And if you can't access any of those, and let us know, we'll try and get you onto those. But it's just a way of just preparing our hearts and minds. In a moment, we're going to have a reading, which is the longer version of the reading we had earlier. But before we do that, I don't know if you have any particular Christmas traditions maybe you do which is different to everyone else. It's something you've done ever since you were kids. Maybe it's been passed down the generations from family to family. For me, I remember one of the things my dad always did with us as kids was drive us around our town looking at the Christmas lights. We used to love doing that. And also something we always did was Christmas Eve, before we went to bed, we got to pick one present that we could open. I'm guessing it was to calm us down. I'm not sure it worked. But all around the world, they have different Christmas traditions. I discovered that in Japan, it's a big family tradition to eat at KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. I didn't know you have to book weeks in advance to get your takeaway or get your place at the restaurant. In Sweden, they celebrate the Yule goat. And if you think that's strange, in Romania, men dress up as goats. So it's just some weird Christmas tradition. But what I remember, which I always loved as kids, and my kids love it too, although as adults it's not quite as exciting, was Christmas crackers. I used to love Christmas crackers. Actually, you're signing. So you can pull and silence that. There you go. There we go. Hey, I won. That's cool. That's good. Thank you. Right, let's see what we got. Here you go. Got a bit of paper. We got a hat and. Well, that's a bit rubbish. What's that? Oh, it's trivia. I used to much prefer the little plastic ones. If you get like Marks and Spencer, you get metal things. So let's put my hat on. There we go. So, I mean, what do we always get in Christmas crackers? One thing we get. Whoa, everything at once. Yeah. So we get the hat. That looks very, very small, and that is not going to fit my head, so I won't put that on. You get that. You get a crown. You get a. Well, in this case, you've got a joke. You've got a little message here. You've got all sorts here. Yeah. Here's the joke. We've got a joke and a message. And then you get a gift of some description. This is a pretty rubbish gift. Don't buy crackers from the factory shop in town. It's not worth it. Sorry. That's gone out online. I might get sued or something. But what you get a crown, you get a message, and you get a gift. And over this Advent season, as we go through this series, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at together. We're going to look at a crown, the fact that we worship and follow an unusual king. That's the theme of this morning's sermon. But this Jesus came to earth with a message. We're going to be unpacking what that message is. But also he came with a gift as well. And we're going to be finding out more about what that gift is that Jesus brought. Before we carry on, look at this story for this morning, the unusual king. I'm going to ask Patsy to come and read to us from John chapter 1. I'll get you a microphone. What should I put away? And the words will appear on the screen. There we go.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision, or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth.
Patsy. Such a, what I think is one of the most beautiful passages, poetic passages in the Bible. And interestingly, John doesn't mention Christmas at all, as we know it, in his passage. But there's 4 Gospels, stories of Jesus, portraits of Jesus, different perspectives on Jesus and his ministry. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And the Christmas story as we know it is only mentioned in Matthew and Luke. Mark is just too excited about getting onto the ministry stuff that Jesus did as an adult, so he misses out the Christmas story completely. Whereas John steps back and kind of gives a bird-eye view of what is actually going on here. When Jesus comes down to earth, what is happening? What is truly going on? In the beginning was the Word. In the beginning echoes the very first verse in our Bible from Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the word, depending on who was hearing this particular, these words from John, they would have slightly different understanding what that word means. For the Jews, it would have been perhaps the spoken word of God. When God created the heavens and the earth, he spoke and it happened. When Jesus speaks, something happens. So maybe they would have had that in mind. Maybe they would have thought about the Word of God, the Torah, the Old Testament as we have it in our Bible, the actual written word where they can find rules and the picture and the story of what God has been doing in creation through his chosen people. But for the non-Jews, maybe the Greeks, the Romans, what we call the Gentiles, for them the word was something they referred to as the principle of rationality behind creation, in which meaning can be found. In other words, God, whatever that might mean. And John is saying here that the word is Jesus. That the word Jesus existed before time, it is with God, and it actually is God. That this newborn king that we can read about in Matthew and Luke's Christmas account is unlike any king before him. He is an unusual king. And we're just going to quickly over the next 10, 15 minutes look at 3 ways in which Jesus is an unusual king. And the first one is this: the unusual king becomes one of us. We're going to jump to verse 14 of our passage. He says, the Word became flesh. And this verse, I think, is explained a little bit better in another beautiful piece of poetry, which Paul, one of the early church leaders and writers of much of the New Testament, he writes in the book of Philippians. And this is the first passage I ever preached on when I was about 17 years old. I did a terrible job, but hopefully I've improved since then. And it says these words in Philippians chapter 2. I'm going to start at verse 6, actually. It says, Jesus, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. See, Paul's telling us, and John is telling us as well in his passage, that God, who created the universe, here at the beginning, making it all happen, overseeing creation, makes himself nothing. And we possibly don't realize how countercultural that message was. Actually, how much, particularly to the non-Jews, and even to the Jews as well, this was ridiculous nonsense to anyone that was hearing these words. See, we like our leaders to have a certain amount of humility, don't we? A bit of modesty. We want them to be unassuming. We like to play it down. If they don't, then we maybe attack them a bit. We don't like someone being a bit too big for their boots. Particularly our newspapers, they like to knock them down a peg or two. We like some modesty, some humility. In fact, dictionary.com, their word for the year is demure. Demure, not a word we use all that much. This came from a viral TikTok video about makeup. But demure is about being reserved and modest, maybe even shy. But for the Romans and the Greeks, humility was not a virtue, far from it. For them, the most highly prized commodity was honor. Having your achievements noted and celebrated. Therefore, boasting about what you have done, what you have achieved was expected. That's what people did. That's what leaders did. Humility, on the other hand, is putting yourself in the position of the lowest of the low, to be pitied rather than praised. And for the Romans and the Greeks and the people like them, for them that would have been disgraceful, degrading, and debasing. The concept, the idea that God would humble himself would have seemed complete nonsense. So the reason we think our leaders should be humble is because of Jesus. We cannot underestimate, we don't realize how much our world shifted over the last 2,000 years in the way it understands and views the world because of Jesus. We shifted from that Roman and Greek understanding to a Christian understanding. That is because of Jesus, we consider humility to be a virtue. And if you think Jesus is someone worth following, maybe someone worth imitating, even if you just think he was a great guy and a good teacher, and some of you here might be people who believe that Jesus was God. Others you might just think, actually, he was quite a good guy. He's possibly worth imitating. How can we demonstrate humility as Jesus did? Perhaps it's about listening more than we speak. Perhaps it's about admitting our mistakes, if you make any. Perhaps it's using we instead of I. Maybe it's celebrating the accomplishments of friends, maybe even rivals. Maybe when you're on a computer checking your Facebook or your X accounts, maybe it's withholding that judgmental response to a post that someone's put online. And maybe for some of us, it's fasting over the Advent period from selfies and the need to be noticed. So number one, we have an unusual king. This unusual king became one of us. Number two, the unusual king, oops, I made that wrong, moves into our neighborhoods. The word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Or as the Eugene Peterson's Message version says, the word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhoods. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever lived near someone that's famous. Put your hand up if you've lived near a famous person. Penny, who have you lived near? Norman Wisdom. You worked with, yeah, cool. What about you? Snoop Dogg. Cool. He was a rap artist, in case you want to know who Snoop Dogg was. I've shared before that I once lived near a professional footballer, which for a young kid was very, very exciting. But I was told when I came to Hawley that there was a possibility of spotting Judi Dench in Waitrose. I've never spotted her, but she's probably quite camouflaged against all the other old people in Waitrose. But I go there too. I go there too. She's only little as well. So who has spotted Judi Dench in Waitrose? See, there's loads of you. I'm just not keeping my eyes open. Oh, well. See, it's exciting to have someone who's well known live near us. But a king, royalty, living in our neighborhoods. I mean, every royal visit there is, the council are spending weeks cleaning up the area. I mean, their world must just smell of fresh paint all the time, because everywhere they go, they want to make it as good as they possibly can. And yet this word dwelling in the original Greek means to pitch his tent next to mine. God, Jesus, creator of the universe, who was there at the beginning of time, who makes something happen, pitches his tent next to mine. And I'm thinking, I live in a detached house, so I can turn my music up and not be disturbing anyone else, and no one is disturbing me. When you're in a tent, you hear everything. When you're in a tent on a campsite, you're sharing the same showers and toilets. Imagine the God of the universe being amongst us, dwelling with us, pitching his tent next to yours. See, Jesus, rather than dwelling in a palace, as kings do, is born into a young family, a bunch of nobodies from a nobody town, raised in the home of a carpenteral building. Think more Court Lodge, the estate which we're next to, rather than Buckingham Palace. And this, if you read the Christmas story, confused the wise men no end. Because where did they turn up looking for this newborn king? Herod's palace, only to find out he wasn't there. See, if you're a Jesus follower, if you're a Christian, like Jesus, you are called to live out your faith in your neighborhoods, in your community. When I trained at Bible college, the posh phrase they used for this was incarnational mission. Incarnate, carnivore, in the flesh. Not separating ourselves, not filling our diaries with church stuff, which is so easy to do, but shining brightly in the darkness and being a light of hope to them. I admit I struggle with this one because I don't really want to talk to my neighbours. They're a bit different. It's so much easier being here. And yet God calls us to step into the dark place that our world often is and to shine brightly like those Christmas lights my dad used to take me around town to see. So 1, Jesus is an unusual king who becomes one of us. 2, Jesus is the unusual king that moves into our neighborhood. And lastly, number 3, Jesus is the unusual king full of grace and truth. It says this in the rest of verse 14. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. See, I think it's very easy for us to imagine a king or some sort of authority figure sitting in their ivory towers declaring edicts and laws from on high. I mean, perhaps that's how you think of God. And recently we had an election, didn't we? Where probably one of our chief concerns was, do these politicians, do these leaders understand the issues that we are facing? Are they interested? Will they do something? And perhaps like me, you were inundated with posts, leaflets through the door, mainly from the Liberal Democrats, it seemed, trying to persuade us that whatever leader's saying, I am just like you. I shop at the same shops. I go to the same cafes. I struggle with the same issues. And this is the things that we've done, or these are the things that we're going to do. We're asking ourselves the question, will this leader guide us into a future where the next generation will flourish? Is this leader humble and trustworthy? And do they understand the everyday issues most of us face? Jesus, the words, God, moved into our neighborhoods, lived amongst us, and therefore knows what life is like. I love these words from Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15. For we do not have a high priest, a big religious figure, who is unable to empathize with our weakness. But we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet did not sin. See, Jesus, the unusual king, came to identify himself with us and came for the least and the lost. Jesus, the unusual king, moved into our neighborhoods, not removed from the reality of everyday life, but living everyday life amongst us. Jesus, the unusual king, came to serve and not be served. And when I was preparing this, I started to think about the Jesus that I can read of in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I think of how he acted, how he treated people. I think of his strength and his humility. I think not only is that someone I want to be like, but that's a king that I can follow. Each week, we're going to watch a video, just a story or a spoken word that's been produced by LICC. We're going to do that, and then we're going to have some questions afterwards, just to stop and think before we sing together. So let's have this video.
Power is social currency. Those who have this seemingly finite resource are often the last to give it up, resulting in more for them and less for us. This skewed perspective creates a frenzy in which survival of the fittest kicks into gear. And I suppose this would be appropriate if we all had access to the same resources, but we don't. At its core, a thirst for power is fueled by insecurity. Perhaps this is why we struggle to trust our leaders. Could it be that their insatiable thirst for power and their hunger for more is a result of insecurity rearing its head? It is difficult to entrust oneself to leadership these days. In many ways, the true character of a leader is determined by their relationship with power. This narrows the playing field regarding who is and isn't a good leader. To narrow the playing field even further, few leaders have taught to love one's enemies. Even fewer have taught that it is better to give than it is to receive, to repay evil with good, and to serve sacrificially for the common good. As beautiful as these principles are, they serve as mere platitudes if understood simply as moral guidance. However, if understood within the context of who it was who said and did these things, the playing field is narrowed down to one player, one leader. If this leader were a football manager, he wouldn't just simply bark instructions from the touchline. He'd immerse himself into the game, braving the cold of December nights in hostile stadiums, enduring grueling tackles from vengeful opposition, leaving his sweat and tears, but most importantly, his blood on the pitch. This leader isn't a sporting coach. This leader is our king, the king who becomes one of us. This unusual king is Jesus.
Some questions. Is Jesus the kind of king you would follow? What would our neighbourhood look like if God ruled and reigned there? How can you be a light of hope to those you live among?
Interesting, isn't it?
It was interesting, yeah.
Is Jesus the kind of king you would follow? Well, I would say yes.
Oh, yes, because Jesus is,
He's Jesus.
and he's the king that we follow.
Yeah, so I don't get that question, but yeah. Cool.
But
What was the next one?
What?
The middle question.
The middle question: what would our neighbourhood look like if God ruled and reigned there? Oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
What do you think?
That's harsh.
Spin it back.
Spin it back. Do you know? I don't know.
Are you saying that if he reigns there, that everyone would be for him?
Yes, if everyone's following him.
Oh, if everyone's that's heaven then, isn't it? Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Is that heaven?
Yeah, I suppose so.
But I suppose in heaven there is no sin, which you still have sin.
You still have sin, because even if God ruled and reigned, and we were all living by God's principles, which is, I guess, what that means.
Which we tried to do.
Which we tried. But if everybody was trying to live by God's principles, and everyone was letting God call the shots, if you like, it would be a very different society. I mean, you're right, aren't you? Because we would still have sin.
Yes.
We would still get it wrong, because we all know, even those of us who are trying to follow Jesus and live as he would have us live, get it wrong all the time.
Yeah. You wouldn't have to pray though, would you? Because you could go to him.
Yeah, that's true. If he was actually there.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think that sometimes you think, if God was physically here, like as Jesus was physically here, would that affect the way that we lived our lives? So if Jesus was in church this morning, would we do it differently? Because the
Definitely.
answer, but the answer to that question should be no, shouldn't it?
Well, no,
Because
he'd be preaching.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Martin, you're out.
Yeah.
But the way we behave and the way we act and the way we talk shouldn't change, should it? Because Jesus is here with us. We believe that God's here by his Spirit. And
Yes.
if he was physically in the room, it shouldn't change the way that we live our lives.
But in reality, it would.
In reality, it would.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. In reality, it would.
Because you'd be thinking, he knows what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And
Even though
my
he doesn't.
thoughts and
Yeah.
things I say under my breath.
Yeah, but even though he does.
Well, I know, yeah.
I
But
know.
he, in a way, seems distant,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
in reality, he isn't.
Yeah, no. So I think that's quite a challenge. I think, what would it look like if God ruled and reigned there? I think, trying to imagine what it would be like if Jesus was actually there, walking amongst us. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because, the verse that perhaps he read, Jesus came and people didn't recognise him,
Yes,
and would the same be the case? I don't know. It's just a bit tricky, isn't it? These are tricky questions today.
Yes, lot to it.
So let's go for the last one. It's a bit more
Yeah.
practical. How can you be a light of hope to those you live among? So, assuming we believe that we have the hope of Jesus in our lives, how can we bring that to others?
What do you mean by the hope of Jesus? Well, you said it.
I know I said it. You're difficult, aren't you, Richard? I'm not going to go up here again.
Get
No.
to go. Oh,
No,
my bad.
no, I think it's great. It's
big
really
band.
good. It's really good. It's very easy to sit here and just talk, sort of platitudes and things you said. Or the hope of Jesus, the hope of a perfect life, a better life.
Oh, you're talking in the future,
In the
right?
future, but also,
Heaven.
yes, sort of heaven,
Oh,
but also
okay.
a better life now. So life with Jesus now is better than life without Jesus now. Not necessarily easier. I don't think living life
Can be harder.
doesn't Jesus follow you out. I don't
Can be
think
harder.
I don't think it necessarily makes it easier. But you've got the God of all eternity on your side. And
So I suppose it's for us to share that, isn't it?
yeah.
Which is difficult, isn't it?
It's difficult. But if we really grasped the enormity of that, would we be better at sharing it? What do you think?
Definitely. I think if we kept it in our mind that that we've got the good news to give to people. It's so easy to just carry on with life and live as a Christian, but not tell anyone. And actually, it's like you've got medicine to give to someone and you're not giving it.
I know. I can't
Challenge there.
Yeah, I've got a half a story in the back of my mind that's just popped in there. But no, that was from my daughter. And I remember she said she was talking to someone who'd become a Christian, and they couldn't believe their friends who were Christians hadn't told them. And they said, "Why have you not told me this before?" And I thought that was quite staggering, really. That because I could be quite evangelical about things. So if I get a new gadget, I tell everybody about it.
Oh right.
Yeah. So I might have told you this before. I've got a.
Go on.
It's a bracket that holds my Kindle when I'm in bed.
Oh,
so
right.
when I'm reading my Kindle in bed, I don't have to hold it. So because what happens is I get pins and needles in my arm. So I've now got like a thing I clip onto the headboard and I hold my Kindle.
Oh, right.
And I've also got a thing that I hold in my hand and it turns a page.
Oh.
So you keep your hands under the covers and you can turn the page. Now I have told, obviously not you, but I have told everybody about this because I think it's the best thing ever. And then also when you fall asleep, it doesn't matter. You don't drop your Kindle on the floor or on the page like I used to. But I've been telling everybody about it because I think it's so cool. But I don't.
Because it would help them if they had a Kindle or whatever.
It would help them. I think it's great. It's exciting. It's good value for money. It was life changing. But I don't tell everybody about Jesus, who is a little bit better. Can I say?
Good value for money.
Good value for money, and way better than a Kindle holder.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
So why is that then?
I don't know.
What are you scared of? I mean, it's the same for everyone.
Yeah,
but I'm asking you.
I don't know because the worst that can happen is someone can. It's a bit like inviting someone to church or to Jingle and Joy, or even just the worst they can do is say no. Or if you're trying to tell them about Jesus, the worst they can say is I don't agree with you. Could laugh at you. I don't think people do laugh at you these days. I think it's, now we're grown up. I don't think.
Do you think it's a society thing? Because you're not, like you don't talk about politics and you don't talk about religion.
Maybe.
You think it's that, isn't it? Because I think when you go, because I've been to Ghana, and you could just talk to anyone about religion there,
Yeah.
even if, you know, different religions
Yeah.
as well, and they'll quite happily discuss with you, everyone.
Really, isn't that funny?
Yeah,
It's
so I
not-
think it's
so-
like
so-
a society
Yeah,
thing,
but we
possibly.
don't talk about it. It's been interesting, isn't it? This week has been they've been debating the assisted dying bill, haven't they, in Parliament? I don't want to talk about that particularly, but there's been quite a lot about whether people should keep their faith out of it, whether the MPs should allow their faith to guide their judgment. I've heard quite a lot of phone-ins on the radio about that, and I sort of think exactly what you're saying. We try and keep religion, we try and keep faith out of things.
Yeah. Would
Jesus?
Jesus do that?
Oh, I don't know. No.
It's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think he would.
No, he wouldn't.
'Cause he- yeah.
And that particular conversation I found quite hard because I thought everybody is bringing their belief to their decision-making process.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So to say you shouldn't bring your faith into your decision-making process, well, everybody is bringing what they believe in or don't believe into their decision-making process.
Yes. Yeah.
But no, but back to, I think you're right. We don't talk about religion. Yeah, but it sort of feels like there's a two-way thing because you've got that going on. We don't talk about it, but then you've also got with the social media. There seems to be a bit more of a freedom for people to say what they think. I feel there's a little bit more that you can actually say what you think. I want to ask Adrian, but it's not on camera. But
This is where you spin the camera.
Yeah, we've got Adrian here with us, but Adrian's a young person. Do you know what I mean, Adrian? That
yeah, people they can say more, and I think it's more of an echo chamber where people can basically they can find people who also agree with what they're kind of saying as well, which makes them emboldened, I think, as well.
Right.
that's a really valid
That
point.
can be a bad thing, though, can't it?
It can be a bad thing because if you get into a bad echo chamber,
Yeah.
you know,
Like, I don't know, murderers.
yes,
You've got
Champions
cancel
or something.
culture and all that as well, though. That if you say the wrong thing online, then it can be kind of very detrimental as well. So you almost have to kind of end up being somewhere mainstream with what you say.
that's true. Don't know if I'm sure you
What's
picked
the
that
big
up. So
thing,
yeah, so if you sort of say something that's bit, you know, out there on social media, you could be cancelled or cancel culture. Yeah, wow. But it is different, isn't it? It is different. But so how can we be a light of hope? Well, it's a Christmas season. What can we do? Richard, what can you do this Christmas to be a light of hope to those you live among?
I suppose it's that good news, isn't it?
Yeah.
And sharing, invite them to Jingle and Joy,
Yes.
which has a little bit of. What kind of Bible content is there, or anything, or is it just a fun family day?
It is a fun family day. They'll see Jesus in the stable. They'll make so there's not an explicit Christmas gospel message. We don't do that,
Right.
but
Yeah.
Jesus is through it. So the crafts they would be doing will be Jesus-based crafts.
Yeah.
There'll be a Christmas tree where they can write things that they're thankful for this Christmas and put that on
That's
the tree.
good. Yeah.
There'll be lots of nativity sets for them to look at, which will be Jesus in the stable. So I think it's just about putting Jesus in the middle of Christmas.
Yes,
So it's
rather
not-
than all the presents and
Just
decorations
Yeah,
and
decorations.
things. Yeah.
And my favourite thing is they'll have lots of balloons with the nativity scene on, and people will take that home. And in my experience, people don't throw balloons away. So
No,
in my experience,
until they pop.
so they'll have a balloon in their house with a picture of Jesus on throughout Christmas. So that's
Gets people thinking.
yeah.
So
And
I suppose we
and
can-
there'll be opportunity for conversation if people want to talk about Christmas and about Jesus. There'll be the opportunity. So
I suppose it's sharing that love as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Having compassion on people.
yeah, and there's also something about showing that people who go to church, people who follow Jesus, are we're okay people, we're generous people, we're loving people. So maybe in times to come, maybe in 2 years' time, when someone's going through a difficult moment, they might think, actually, that was a place where I can go and I can receive love and I can receive support. And maybe then that's when they can find Jesus.
Yes. It is, yeah.
Yeah. So lots of chat there. I hope our chat has not put you off what Martin said. I hope we've added to it rather than detracted from it.
Yeah.
If you've got any questions, you're always welcome to email us at gotquestions@hawleybaptist.org.uk. Should I do that thing that they do on the telly?
What are you doing?
Oh, I was going to go like that.
Oh, you
look.
put-
Oh, yeah, look.
Oh,
Oh, you
it's all
can't
back
hear
to
that
the
on
front.
the podcast. Yeah, I know. I'm running my finger across the top of it. You
Something
can't.
there. Oh,
yeah,
there we
it
go.
is. Yeah, there we go.
It is.
Anyway, you can email us and somebody will get back to you. If you've enjoyed this morning's sermon, then do feel free to share it with somebody else. Like us and follow us on YouTube. This is the first of a series of 4, so do listen in for the others.
That'd be
If you
good.
want to join that reading plan, remember you can join in with us. Just look up the LICC website and you'll find it, the reading plan to join with us as we read through December. But yeah.
Great.